listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NAX. Whether it's for food, fuel, drinks, or snacks, about half the U.S. population shops at a convenience store every day. We'll talk about what we see at stores and what the future may hold for our industry.
You know, we all like to prevent problems from happening. We brush our teeth to prevent cavities. We change our oil to prevent damaging our vehicle engine. Spend now so you don't have to really pay later. As a fuel retailer or a fleet owner, fuel quality is extremely important to your business and the reputation you've worked hard to establish. So today we thought we'd present to you ways in which you can prevent damaging your reputation and, more importantly, your bottom line. Here's a hint. It starts with your storage tanks. Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is Donovan Woods with the Fuels Institute, and I'm joined today by my co-host.
It's John Eichberger of the Fuels Institute NAX, and Donovan, I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, John. I'm happy to be here as well, and I'm excited about our guest today. We're joined by Michael Vanover, the president and CEO of Clean Fuels National. Now, Michael is a recognized expert in the petroleum industry. He's a sought-after speaker, and he's an expert in identifying and helping organizations of all sizes. I really appreciate that part, of all sizes and backgrounds, to prevent contaminating their fuels and really to prevent problems. Michael, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You know, Michael, we met you, personally, I think at the Chicago Fuels Institute meeting, I want to say. It was the first time I actually came in contact with you. I met Jerry, and I think you came through. And your background, the story of Clean Fuels National, is one that I think is very entertaining and very inspirational as well. Could you maybe give us a 2-minute recap of 2000 until where we are now?
Yeah, 2-minute recap. I can do that. There's a lot of space there, but absolutely. So, I came from a background in communication and data wiring and fiber optics, and then also political science. So we had some. My father was a serial entrepreneur, so we had a couple business deals that went south and put us in a bad situation back there around 2000. So, just before 2000. And through networks and relationships that we'd built with other people, we had come across this system that cleaned saddle tanks on semi-trailers, tractor trailers, so very small tanks. And they kind of sit on a furniture dolly and ran off a 110, and were pretty primitive in nature. But anyway, we got hooked up with this person who'd supposedly put that together and wanted to get out of it because they said it was a dead industry. But we'd been prompted through other relationships that said, hey, you guys have such a strong work ethic, and we really think you can make this work and turn into something else that would be much better for you. So at that point, we'd gone and met with this gentleman and looked at the system and made some decisions. My brother and I, my brother who just retired from the Navy, and my father, were looking for something else to do. And if I have a chance to work with my family, I was going to do it.
Yeah, I think that our listeners can appreciate that many of our retailers are family-owned businesses or small 1 or 2 store owners.
Absolutely.
And I love the fact that when you look at your story online and the LinkedIn page as well as the website for Clean Fuels National, the family atmosphere also extended to the community you worked in. And that's really important to C-store retailers. They are a part of the community. How does the community play a role in the growth of your business?
Well, I can look at that on a smaller scale, even a larger scale when we talk about community. But when we first started, I knew nothing about fuel. We didn't have background in fuel. Okay, so we come back to our hometown and really existed off of the will and goodwill of our neighbors and friends, and we're in a farming community. So there were a lot of combines out there and agricultural vehicles that were having fuel issues. So we had this new system that could help clean that up. So we spent time filtering and cleaning up very small tanks, working on combines, working on grain hauling trucks, and then a lot of time people ran on fuel oil out there in the country to heat their home. So we were finding these different kind of problems, like going around sampling tanks. We ran into some tanks that actually were 5,000 and 8,000 gallon tanks that we knew at that point with what we had, we could not really give that person the bang for their buck. And you want to talk about tough customers. People who are farmers are tough to sell about anything. So everybody becomes, they all of a sudden are all from Missouri when you're trying to talk to them. So those good relationships only go so far. But anyway, we had to prove ourselves. And we talk about community when we finally got into retail with an upgraded system, better system, learning and cutting our teeth on those smaller tanks. When we got in that area, we found out very quickly that even though the fuel industry as a whole is very large, I mean, we know that, but it's also a very small community. When you get to know people in environmental that may be in Pennsylvania or out on the East Coast or even the West Coast, everybody knows one another. So, the good part of that is if you do a good job, everybody talks about it. The bad part is you do a bad job, everybody knows it tomorrow. So, we've done well since 2000 to maintain a very good reputation.
Sometimes timing is everything.
Absolutely.
And so you guys get started in 2000. 2006, we pull all the sulfur out of diesel fuel. 2007, I started getting calls from tank owners going, "Hey, John, what's going on, man? I'm seeing like coffee grounds, and my ATG looks like it's 20 years old. It's only a year old. I don't know what's going on." Enter the age of excessive corrosion underground storage tanks. That must have, at the timing of you guys getting up and running and getting some scale, and then what's now considered almost a ubiquitous problem across the industry kind of came together, didn't it?
It did, and I think a lot of these problems that we're seeing today did exist. Okay, maybe not on the scale, but people's knowledge of what's going on in their underground storage tanks has increased. So, like through organizations such as yourself, you're trying to raise awareness, and so that's great. So people are noticing now, and they want to know what's in the bottom of their tank, and they want to find these contaminations. They want to stop these problems before they happen. So a lot of the time, we had a bad habit in this industry of managing by crisis, and I think as human beings we tend to do that anyway. But we're trying to take them out of that mindset, and we've been very instrumental in that since 2000. And definitely the people or the organizations that we have been able to help them or install that tailored system for them are definitely seeing those benefits today as we go forward. And then we still got some that are trying to catch up. But So
you and I have had this conversation and through the Fuels Institute Diesel Fuel Quality Council and at a panel at the NAC show. We're trying to educate tank owners. What should they be looking for to monitor their tank health, their fuel health? Are there certain things they should be hyper-focused on to make sure that if there's a problem, they know it as soon as it starts materializing?
There are. So a good wet stock management program, somebody who can start watching slow flow, monitor those for you on the dispenser is a really good start. But there are things you can do just on the ground that are really, really inexpensive, which is just looking for those obvious things like, are your seals tight? Do we have water intrusion coming in from an old drain plug around a drop tube at the fill? Do we have a vapor recovery that's been damaged by maybe somebody putting a screwdriver down in there to hold that open, or because it wasn't functioning correctly to begin with? So we know that's happened. There's just a lot of things you can look at right there on top of above grade that could cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even create environmental risk by having a release into the environment, or allowing again water to come in there and displace that, or as we know with ethanol fuel, creating phase separation. And this poses a lot of challenges for people who do own below ground storage tanks or even above ground storage tanks. But there's a very simple thing you can do. There's just paying attention to it. It's not out of sight, out of mind. So we have to dedicate time and effort into looking at those tanks and paying attention to it, because ultimately that's going to be our customer's experience coming to that store.
That idea of preventative and, as you said, getting ahead of it. It sounds good, but sometimes when things are working, it's hard to really think about them and worry about them. I always think back to my mother-in-law. When I first met her, she used to tell me, well, I have a Honda Accord. These cars don't need to have their oil changed. They're that good. Right. And she learned. But that idea of it's working is so great, I don't have to do anything. How do you change a customer's mindset that hasn't had an issue, or as you said, like some type of really bad experience?
It's not broke, so don't fix it, which is what we hear. Yeah, we've heard that too. I think that what comes, we have such a strong pedigree and such strong references behind us that helps a ton. So if I come in and I'm asking somebody, I've got a list of people in their hometown or even in their state that are going to say, hey, these guys know what they're doing. They're going to stand behind their workmanship. They're going to stand behind their word, and they're going to do what's right by you. Now, we still run into those guys that are kind of holdouts, but the good thing is that, I shouldn't say good thing, because it's not good for the person who owns those tanks, but what's good at convincing them is that not many people can go through this industry and not have some sort of problem. And if they aren't having one, and without a good housekeeping program they're definitely going to have one at some point. There's just no way around it. So, oftentimes, if I get a chance to take a look at what's going on in the bottom of that tank, if I can take a sample and leave that sample there with them, I mean, that dark stuff sitting on the bottom, it's going to get somebody's attention. At the end of the day, you've got a filter that might be worth $4 on a dispenser that will hold a handful of contamination that's standing in between your customer and your reputation. And I'm sorry, that's not enough. It wouldn't be enough for me. I don't think it's enough for most people.
You guys have been leaders on our Diesel Fuel Quality Council since we started, trying to help us figure out the best way to deliver the highest quality fuel to the end customer. And the thing that's kind of been resonating the last year or two is, if there's one thing we need to be laser focused on, it's water. Water seems to be the number one enemy to a healthy storage tank system. What are the best ways you mentioned check your seals and check those things. What are the best things we can be doing to make sure that we are managing that water content?
Well, water finds a way. I mean, it just does.
Yeah.
So, and as we know, especially we were just talking diesel has an affinity for water, either emulsified or otherwise. So you're right. And the number one enemy here is water. And so people want to talk about all the peripheral. They want to talk about microbial growth. Well, microbial growth isn't going to exist in that fuel unless there is some moisture content that is measurable. So, again, paying attention to your tank, making sure those seals are tight, sampling from the bottom of the tank at the low end of that tank, which could unfortunately be down by the STP area or the motor that's driving the fuel actually to the dispensers. But we just have to stay on top of it and monitor that tank. If we do that, then we can find these water levels. We could do something called ATP testing, which is going to look for live microbial growth in those tanks. That's something we could do too. But again, eliminating moisture, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That's the biggest problem. But with below ground tanks, water finds a way. We keep lower levels in tanks. We've got dead space in there where there's vapor, there's condensation. I mean, these things happen, they occur. But water is the number one enemy, and trying to totally eliminate that is what we need to focus on. It really is.
Yeah.
Well, preventative maintenance works if you can have, convince someone that things could happen, especially someone that's already happened to.
Right.
Or if they can be your best customer marketing, really tell other people, hey, this happened to me. But when it comes to other things that you guys do, you mentioned above ground as well as underground storage tanks. Who really is your customer then? Would it be just fuel retailers, or is it pretty much anyone that has any type of fuel or fleet?
If there is stored fuel, they're our customer, and we have really broken into about every place that has some sort of storage. If that's emergency backup generation, if that's a military facility, whatever that is, if they have stored fuel, we have a solution for them. And nothing is cookie cutter, and we found that out very early on in this industry, that we have to tailor a program to them. And even our cleaning process, the way it is, a lot of that is depending on how we read that contamination, how we react to that contamination, and the plan we lay out to then deal with that contamination. So, there are some problem tanks out in the industry. We know that. Those might need a little more care than one that's just been, installed a week ago. But getting behind that and staying on top of it early is definitely the answer. So, any place there's stored fuel, we're not just restricted to, retail sites or the large customers, and we look at them. But we still do a lot of work out there in the agriculture world for a 500-gallon tank. I mean, because it's just as important to them. If we shut down, $200 or $250,000 piece of equipment,
right,
that's big money, and it starts at the fuel supply. So none of them are too big or too small.
And Donovan, I think that's the message that needs to be out there is,
yep,
if you're a tank owner, regardless of whatever your application is, you have an investment in your equipment. And if you're not maintaining that equipment fails, you have to replace the equipment. And that's expensive, plus you have the environmental cleanup associated with any type of release. If your equipment is fine, but you are introducing a contaminated fuel product to your customers or to your own proprietary vehicles, I know in the mining industry, if you shut down a mining equipment, you're losing millions of dollars a day. There's an operating efficiency here and a cost of lost opportunity cost that if we're not paying attention to this, laser focused on it, the consequence could be catastrophic. Yet the prevention is not that expensive.
No.
And that's really what we got to get into these guys' heads.
Yeah, I mean, just preventive programs in themselves, a lot of time it's that customer investing their time and effort or putting people that are in charge of it. I mean, building the program and all of that is relatively inexpensive. It really is. It's monitoring. It's getting yourself to that point and fixing or maintaining equipment that you should be maintaining anyway. You're not going to want to replace in 6 months. So, it is inexpensive. I agree.
Yeah. And, we both chuckled a little bit when Michael, you said that sometimes I'll stick a screwdriver in the top of a vent pipe.
Right.
Yeah.
That is not out of the norm. I mean, I remember talking to EPA inspectors saying, I went to a couple stores and I said, your overfill alarm is turned off. Well, yeah, it kept going off, so I just turned it off.
Right.
Really? Come on now.
That's one way to stop it.
That's like switching from alcohol filters because they keep plugging or they run slow, then going to particulate and say, well, they ran fine. Well, they were doing their job. I mean, so that was a huge indicator of a problem. Overfill alarm's a big one we see. I've seen things like vent pipes tied together and caused issues. Everybody said, I keep getting a cross drop. No, you don't. You've got other problems going on here. But I run into this thing where, people who write the rules are saying, well, that's against the rules. They shouldn't have it like that. Well, I agree. But then when we start putting the real world into the mix here, we start seeing that all those things are happening. And so it is our job more than anything. I could say our job is to clean tanks or set up preventive maintenance programs, but our job more than anything is to educate the industry the most we can based on our experience. And we've got a ton of it. We work east to west coast.
And that's exactly why I asked the question I did in terms of who would your customers be. That could have been, our listeners could have thought, well, that's a marketing plug right there. And you didn't take the bait for that, and I appreciate it. And that's why you're a part of the Diesel Fuel Quality Council. That's why we did invite you to this. That's why you're involved with the Fuels Institute. Your background, I think, lends itself to being one of discipline, as well as one of really seeing the value of not only preventive maintenance and things to take care of, but also, I'm assuming, your body. And that may sound like a weird transition, but bear with me. You have, again, one of the coolest backgrounds. And I remember, again, when you first came to our event, someone mentioned, man, there's this guy here that's, the first thing I heard was he's an MMA fighter. And now I'm like, what, really? Can you clarify that? Your background is martial arts, mixed martial arts. What are we talking here?
Well, I'd never say I was an MMA fighter, even though I've participated in some of that. But I started early on at the age of about 6 in competition judo and Japanese jiu-jitsu. So, my background in martial arts has definitely helped me in the business world, I feel. But I've always had a love for the martial arts, and I've always stayed involved up to the point where, I was competing and tried other arts and got involved in some stuff early on in the 90s also, when sort of the MMA crowd was on the rise, or we started pushing those directions and really making it mainstream. But overall, when I got to the point where I didn't want to compete anymore because I had to get up and go to work the next day. and I'm starting here in my 40s now, feeling about every single injury that I walked off. I'm kind of saying, geez, I think maybe I should probably just teach instead. So I'm also, a firearms instructor, and I work with SWAT teams. I work with police departments. I work with sheriff's departments. I work with military. I've really taken the time to get every single certificate I could and prove myself in front of a board and saying, look, here's who I am and here's what I do. But I would say probably the biggest lesson I learned throughout all of that my role is really to help others and reach down to others as much as I can. And it definitely drove that lesson home for me more than once. Because if you're going to learn anything in martial arts, it's that, anybody can be gotten just depending on what day it is. You go into a gym with a bunch of guys that are in good health, even though I may be a little sneakier and wiser than them on the mat, you can get caught, and so you realize that we're all human, we're all struggling, and none of us are perfect or impervious to this world. So yeah, we try to help, and I bring that over to our business too. I really try to help people and be empathetic there with the struggles they're having and wherever they're at in the role of catching up to information or what they need to know in the industry.
No, I have to share this really quick, John. Don't go with that question you have, because you mentioned the part about transferring it over and helping people to your business, and I saw this again social media, but I had to share with our listeners. There was something you guys did recently. I'll just read it here. The money was raised to pay off all current past due lunch accounts for all 3 school systems in Wells County. That's pretty cool. I don't know, where is Wells County?
We're just south of Fort Wayne.
Okay. It really doesn't matter where it's at. Anyone who helps kids, I think not only Fuels Institute, but any decent person is behind. And I really appreciate that story. And that's also why I got you up here. It kind of builds the platform of what we're saying. Care about your equipment. It also shows your customers what you care about them. It also shows your employees you care about them, because if things are running, you can afford to keep everything running. Take the time now to invest in your community and as well as your own stores.
Right, and I was shocked to see that kind of hit the headlines as it did, with the money we gave to our local schools there. I've made it a point of always trying to give back, and heck, I was giving money for blankets in Oklahoma and all over the place. But then I also noticed that my own local community had some need too. So I really tried to reach out. And, I never expected any of that to hit any kind of media or have people calling me and saying, hey, great job on that, because it definitely wasn't the reason we did it. But I always appreciate the thank yous. I mean, it means that we're doing something right. And I love hearing that feedback and knowing that it matters.
Absolutely.
And we are making a difference.
This is supposed to be about tanks and fuels and stuff, but you teed off for me the idea of the concept of leadership, and how when you're leading an organization, the values you impart onto it, they have a major impact. And so you're talking about educating and helping people, and I have had the pleasure of interacting with a number of your employees. And I'll tell you, Donovan, it's true. If you lead with example, your team will follow your example. And the values you've expressed today, Michael, I see are resonating throughout your organization with everybody I interact with. So I think, for our listeners, we talk a lot about leadership in the NACS world. And I think you're exemplifying that if you set the standards and you set the culture, people will follow. And that's a testament to your leadership.
Thank you for that. I enjoy hearing that. But I know I couldn't be where I was if it wasn't for other people. It wasn't for my team, and then, especially with my father retired in 2009, and then my brother retired in 2018. So I was last man standing. And, I came and kind of reorganized. And as a result, we ended up winning the Inc. 5000 award 2 years in a row. But I have a very strong team. And I encourage everybody there to be a leader in their own way, in their own department. And I know we're never going to be perfect. I mean, none of us are going to be, but we strive for it, and I really try to show through example. There's not one job at my company I'm above doing, not one of them, and I've done all of them. And so, I try to uplift that team and give them the freedom to have some creative ability and reach those heights in their own personal growth. And when you do that, you will have I absolutely 100% believe in it. It's leadership. It's not being a boss. It's not demanding things. It is absolutely leadership and guiding people and showing them a better way, because if you do that, you'll be strong, top to the bottom.
Absolutely.
Well, Michael, I appreciate you being here. Again, I've been waiting for this interview. I'm glad that your team got me in touch with you and you were able to actually be in studio with us. We really appreciate the effort you put forth. And again, the message there, take the time, invest not only in your stores, your tanks, think about your customers. It really pays benefits to everyone you come into contact with. Appreciate that, Michael.
Thank you for the invite, and thank you.
Where can they go for more information on Clean Fuels National, what you guys do?
Cleanfuelsnational.com. That's just cleanfuelsnational.com.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Michael. Really appreciate it. And on behalf of Donovan and myself, thank you guys for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.